Okay. So we decided to model drug addiction as a social contagion. And our research question was, how do the illegal drug usage habits of an individual's friends affect their own drug usage? So basically, we were wondering how, like, if most of your friends were using drugs or not using drugs, how that would affect your own drug usage. And then the assumptions we made were that each cell represents a person, and we used more neighborhood to represent the individual's friend group. We started out with an initial population of people using drugs, and then at each time step, a person can like decide to start using drugs, or if they're already using drugs, they can decide to stop doing drugs. And the rule that we implemented was that if a person has at least 4 friends in their neighborhood who are also doing drugs, they will start doing drugs. And so it ended up being like a model of peer pressure. And then now we're going to look at the code.
Yeah. So we basically have just a couple of functions that are driving this. We have a initialize function, which basically creates a matrix of an n by n matrix where we are randomly turning people on or turning them onto drugs based off this random probability p that we'll set. We have an observe function here, which is just going to show the matrix with yellow, the color yellow equaling drug users and the color purple equaling non-users. We have our update world function, which basically is how we're changing from state to state. We're randomly deciding to turn someone onto drugs based off some random probability titled probability on. And down here is the rule that we implemented where we check all around the cell that we're at, and if they have more than if they have 4 or more friends that are onto drugs, symbolized by like ones, they will also turn off of drugs. This is our intervention function that we kind of made. So this is how people randomly turn off based on like a self-intervention kind of thing. And then we just have a function down here to count the total cells. So we can show off what different things that we're doing here. So in this instance, we're starting with a pretty low population of people initially being on drugs. We're making the chance for someone to try out and try drugs to be fairly high, with 50%, and then a chance for them to get off drugs with low-ish percentage. And if we run this, we can see that this yellow marks drug users, so you can start to see that it grows as kind of time goes on, even though we started with a very low number of users. We're only running this for about 100 steps. I guess I should show how this works. We're only showing it for 100 steps. We're showing every 5 steps in this picture, so we definitely could run this for longer and get this kind of percolation effect to just kind of overtake the whole system based on our current parameters. But we kind of cut it shorter just because it started to get really laggy. We can show a couple other states. Here, if we start the population at about 50% of the users being on drugs, and let's see, we'll make it pretty likely that people will start to try drugs. But then we're also going to make this this intervention probability be about 0.41. So it's still fairly lower than like why people would want to try drugs. But if we if we run this, we can slowly start to see that these pools of non-drug users start to dominate a little bit and take over, which is pretty surprising given that it's a very high chance that people start drugs. We have a very large population that initially start on drugs, so it's interesting. It kind of shows that like, interventions might work, and even if we bump this up even a little bit, you can see that that little bit really, really affects the system, and we can really start to overtake. So basically about halfway through, no one in the system is using drugs at all. Yeah, right there. And this kind of follows, even if we, like, we can really bump this up high. And as we, I don't know if that captured the whole thing, even if we start a lot of the population onto drugs, we can still see that even with our relatively low intervention probability, it really starts to seem in favor of non-drug users. And yeah, that was basically your project. Katey, I don't know if there's more that you'd like to add right now.
I would just add that it's interesting to me how we have these pools of non-drug users and how that almost acts as a protective effect, and that like they seem to like group together into little like friend groups. I also think it would be interesting to talk to like an addiction counselor and figure out like a more realistic, I think, probability off number, because I think right now our intervention is unrealistically useful, since obviously this does not reflect how real world works, since there's a lean toward non-drug usage. But other than that, yeah, that's all I got.
Awesome. Well, thanks. That's the project. All right. Bye.